Welcome back to Washington Journal. We're joined now by Representative John Larson. He's a Democrat of Connecticut, member of the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Trade, and the ranking member on the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Social Security. Congressman, welcome.
Good to be with you, Mimi. And
Uh,
thank C-SPAN for all you do. Just listening to some of the advertisements coming up and being a former history teacher, just how vitally important, especially during these times, that history and the ability to get nonpartisan facts and messages is vitally important.
well, thank you for that, Congressman, and want to hear your reaction to the announcements of President Trump's tariffs yesterday.
Well, I think, everybody's been anticipating it. And, it's not often that Democrats find themselves aligned with the Wall Street Journal. But in this case, Mr. Trump seems to be single-minded and single-focused on his concept of tariffs and what that will mean. And as everyone now knows from the news, is what he's imposing on countries. I think the New York Times said it best. He's started a trade war. And our job is to make sure what that impact is on the average consumer, who will be directly hit by this, and then calling before Congress to make these individuals so that we have the hearings so that there's better clarity and understanding about what this impact will be. And clarity and understanding is something that seems to have eluded this administration, albeit Trump likes to say he's very clear about keeping campaign promises. And this was one of his campaign promises. But running the government is not about campaign promises. It's about its impact on the people and what it will mean for us from an economic perspective.
Now, President Trump says that the U.S. has been treated unfairly by other countries and that he's simply leveling the playing field. Do you agree with that?
Very a very populist point of view. If it were that simple, but as Mimi, as you're aware, trade is very complex and complicated in many respects. But at its core, and this is what makes Trump powerful, is he's when you say things in simple terms like "made in America" and providing more manufacturing and creating more jobs here, who disagrees with that? But when you look at the impact of his proposals and the fact that other nations also have people and understand what the impact is there, and I agree with the New York Times, what he's done is kick off a trade war instead of making sure that there's a way for us to guarantee and get the what's in the best interest for all Americans, including consumers, but also our manufacturers and our developers, et cetera. And across the board swipe at tariffs doesn't seem to get us there. And that's why it's going to be critically important. I commend the senators that stood up the other day over the Canadian trade issue, but it's going to be critically important that we call the administration before us and the American people get to see firsthand what this impact will be. And that means calling forward the key economists, Rich Neal, our ranking member on the Ways and Means Committee, has already called, and Harkin and Democrats are united in this fact that we want to see these individuals come before Congress, including Mr. Musk himself, whether he's still in the administration or not.
Well, Congressman, I mean, beyond calling the hearings that you mentioned, Senator Tim Kaine, as you know, introduced a resolution yesterday to undo President Trump's tariffs on Canada. Will that get a hearing in Congress? Will in the House? Will you propose a similar measure in the House?
Yes, and Susan Delbene has also proposed, and I'm a co-sponsor of that bill, the Prevent Tariff Abuse Act. So Congress is responding with legislation, but this is the key point. The question then becomes, will the House majority take that up? Will they provide for that? We on the committee are going to introduce, we meaning the Democrats on the committee, are going to introduce legislation, and we hope, as Mr. Kaine does in the Senate, that we're going to find willing partners on the other side of the aisle. And I think based on the impact that this is going to have on farming alone, and based on what we're hearing, we noticed, as you probably did, that Congress adjourned on Tuesday this week because Speaker Johnson didn't want them here to have to deal with this broad, sweeping announcement that President Trump made late yesterday afternoon.
And if you'd like to join our conversation with Representative John Larson, you can start calling in now. He's a Democrat from Connecticut. The numbers are Republicans 202 748 8001, Democrats 202 748 8000, and Independents 202 748 8002. Congressman, you are on the subcommittee for Social Security.
Yes.
Elon Musk and Doge have made assertions about millions of dead people collecting Social Security benefits. He says that immigrants are being given Social Security cards and collecting Social Security benefits. What's your response to that?
It's a complete nonsense, and it shows you what the lack of detail and understanding of how the process works. Look, Elon Musk is a very gifted and talented person. He's the wealthiest man in the world. But that does not exempt him from coming before Congress and testifying as to why do they need access to everyone's data and information on Social Security, and also their goal, which is to privatize. And he's made no bones about that. He's said it publicly, he's said it on TV shows, and they're playing good cop, bad cop between Trump with his hands across his heart saying, we're not going to touch Social Security. But meantime, they're closing regional offices, they're making phone conversations more difficult, they're making it tough, and they're dismantling. Their goal of privatization is to dismantle the Social Security Administration from within so that they get to say to the American people, well, this is chaotic. You're not able to get your phone calls returned. You have to drive an hour to get any kind of information, when this should be a very friendly consumer office. Previous commissioner and former governor O'Malley had to say before the caucus that he was able to drive things down in terms of time, and that's with an administrative budget that's under 1% for the largest insurance program that the nation has. It's clearly underfunded. Trump and Musk specifically disagree with the bureaucracy. Their goal is to privatize it. And you know what else, Mimi? When you look at Social Security, and you look at the budget in general, you're given a task of cutting $2 trillion. And he openly says the three major budgets are Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, and defense. However, only one of those has 2,700,000,000,000 in a trust fund. That's the people's money that's in that trust fund. And that's what they're eyeing with their scheme towards privatization. And because they believe, philosophically and otherwise, that bureaucracies don't work, it's the private sector that will make things more efficient and effective. Well, government is not simply about dollars and cents, it's about people. It's why the preamble starts off, we the people. And our goal is to make sure that the nation's number one anti poverty program for the elderly and the number one anti poverty program for children until the child tax credit becomes permanent remains intact, because that's exactly what the American people need. And they're astonished when they find out that the last time Congress has enhanced the program was 1971. Do you think a few things have changed since 1971 and Richard Nixon was president?
Well,
Certainly the American people know this, and it's long overdue. I'm proud that Democrats, and led by Hakeem Jeffries and Rich Neal, et cetera, are focused on making sure that we not only protect Social Security, but we enhance a system that was last enhanced in
so,
1971.
Congressman, what is your plan then to enhance Social Security? If not
Sure.
privatization, what is your plan, and do you think it can actually come to pass?
I actually do think it will come to pass. The question is, can we get, and we saw some glimpse of hope in the Senate the other day on the trade bill, but can we get in the House of Representatives three people that will agree with us that there needs to be an across the board increase with regard to Social Security? Because it hasn't taken place since 1971. And there's 73 million Americans that are currently receiving Social Security and 10,000 baby boomers a day who become eligible. They also should be eligible for tax cut. Since 1983, people have been double taxed when they find themselves working after their retirement and yet being taxed on the Social Security that they've already paid for. That's flat out wrong. We're out to not only change that, but also to make it permanent. And that would mean tax relief for 23 million people. Now, so it's President Trump says he wants this tax cut also. But here's the difference, Mimi. We pay for ours. And how do we pay for this enhancement of benefits, this limiting the waiting time for disability, making sure that no one can retire into poverty having paid into a system all their lives, where currently we have more than 5 million of our fellow Americans who get below poverty level checks from their government, though they paid in all their lives to a system that is a guarantee. What's preventing that is Congress taking action. And that's why we make sure that the new poverty level for Social Security payments, the minimum payment will be 125% above the poverty line so that nobody can retire into poverty in the United States of America.
And
That's the
Congressman,
genius of Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
and I didn't catch how you plan to pay for that.
We plan to pay for it. Again, I commend President Biden for saying, very simple, everybody ought to pay their fair share. A lot of Americans don't understand or realize that there's a cap on Social Security. Currently, it's $173,000. So anything above that, you're not paying into Social Security. Should Elon Musk at $500 billion be paying into Social Security? Absolutely.
All right,
And
let's.
so what Biden proposes to lift the cap on people making over 400,000. And by doing that, we not only extend the solvency of the program, but we're able to add these critical benefits for people that haven't seen an increase since 1971.
All right.